There used to be a time, before the end, when the world used to be normal. Before the dead rose and outnumbered the living. Before unspeakable horrors roamed this world, claimed its lands for their own, and pushed humanity to the end.
Only the scraps remain, the fragments, the dust, the bones of a dead world.
For now, all that's left is the Cataclysm, and the Dark Days are here.
Alright, so with that intro done, dusted out of the way and settled, ladies and gentlemen, I think we're just about ready to begin! Hello everybody, and welcome back to the channel. I'm your host here as per usual, because there's nobody else knocking about. So I'm Farrugia, and today I'm going to be presenting you the first episode in a brand new series we're going to be launching here in the near future regarding how to play the game Cataclysm Dark Days Ahead in a blind-friendly manner. For those of you who don't know, if you perhaps stumble across this video without knowing maybe what Cataclysm exactly is, first and foremost, I'd like to welcome you to the channel. It's great to have you around. And second of all, Cataclysm. Let's give you a brief overview, shall we? The game is a zombie survival roguelike set in the near future where you're a survivor trying to eke out an existence during, spoiler alert, the Cataclysm. I know, very surprising. The game is an absolutely fantastic little gem which is playable for the blind and visually impaired. However, it has a few caveats, a few issues inherent with it, which makes it a bit confusing to get started with if you don't really know what's going on and you're not used to a bit of its quirks. So these series of videos will be looking at the elements of the game, from the UI, to the inventory, to the combat, to just about anything and everything that the game has to offer, hopefully, dissecting it, putting it on a platter, serving it to you people, and showing you how you can understand what the hell the game is throwing at you, how you can customize it in such a way that you can play it, and how you can get the most out of this game that you can possibly get. So, before we dive into the subject matter for this video, I think it's always wise to start at the very beginning with the requirements. So, what are you going to need in order to follow along and understand this tutorial series? Well, you're going to need two things, and you're going to want three things if you want to be nice to yourself. So, number one, you are going to want a VM, specifically running a Linux distribution. It doesn't really matter which Linux distribution you're running, however, you have to have it. Despite the fact that Cataclysm is available on Windows and Mac and, even Android and iOS, I do believe, I'm not quite sure about iOS, but definitely on Android, those versions are not accessible. At least to my knowledge, definitely the Windows version is not accessible, and definitely the Android version is not accessible. There are a few technical reasons behind that, which I'm not going to get into because, frankly, my mind is a peanut and I don't understand why. But the Linux version, the Linux terminal, is quite receptive when it comes to screen readers, to my knowledge at least. I could be completely wrong. But anyway, Linux has some archaic magic which makes this game playable, let's leave it at that. So you're gonna want a Linux distribution. I hear you can also play this game on WSL, the Windows Linux subsystem that is available on Windows 10 and 11. I can't verify that because I've never tried it out, because again, I reference you back to my comment, Peanut Brain. I can't set it up for my goddamn life. Tried, took me hours, got nowhere, so I abandoned it. So I'm going to be showing you using a Linux VM. It doesn't really matter which distribution of Linux you're going to be using, however, for the purposes of this tutorial, I'm going to be running with Ubuntu because Ubuntu has a built-in screen reader, Orca, so you don't need to faff around with that, and it's the most common Linux distribution. A word of warning, however, if you're going to be using Ubuntu, you're going to want to take Ubuntu 18 or anything before that. That's because, as I found out the hard way, when I updated my Ubuntu 18 distribution to Ubuntu 24, I do believe, a few changes happened to the terminal on Linux, which basically made the game completely and utterly inaccessible, which defeated the point for having the system to begin with. So, if you're going to be using Ubuntu Buddy, you're going to want to stick to Ubuntu 18 and before. It's just a bit more accessible, at least when it comes to Cataclysm. Now, with that out of the way, let's go to thing number 2. You're gonna want a numpad. By no means do you need a numpad to play Cataclysm Dark Days Ahead, but it's sort of like saying you don't need heating in the car, you don't need seats in the car, but if you want to make your life easier, you're gonna have them anyway, because the numpad lets you review information in the game, and it also lets you control things and get feedback in a bit more of an accessible fashion. Now, the last thing you're going to need is a big old mug of steaming hot coffee, because this is going to be a long series, guys, and we're going to be covering a lot of material. So just sit back, relax, and I hope that you understand a bit more of the game after this tutorial series, and it will be at least moderately helpful. So here we are dumped, right, sitting pretty in the Cataclysm directory. I've just downloaded this version of Cataclysm right off of the internet. Now, that being said, I know we said we're going to get into it, but another thing I need to mention before we exactly move on, there are 2 versions of Cataclysm. You're going to be picking, well, you're going to be picking either of those 2 versions, and I'm going to be picking both of them. You're going to either be picking a latest experimental or a stable version. Now, basically, Cataclysm is a community-maintained game, which means updates come out for it like nobody's business. There's usually around 15 or 20 per day, with probably more. It's a very active game, so the latest experimental has all of those latest bells and whistles integrated with it, but it also has the latest bugs, because, spoiler alert, not all of those features that get into the latest experimental are bug-checked quite as thoroughly as you'd hope. So something catastrophic could happen, and you could lose your entire save. So, you know, it's kind of playing with fire over there. The latest stable version, however, as you could probably ascertain, is the version of Cataclysm which is the most polished, the most bug-free experience. However, it lags behind the latest experimental. A stable version of Cataclysm comes out roughly once every 6 months, which means that it's going to be 6 months worth of bugs freer, but it's also going to be 6 months worth of features freer. I'm pretty sure what I said is English in some capacity. Anyway, trucking along. I'm going to be using the latest experimental. It shouldn't really matter for this tutorial series if you use experimental or stable. One other thing, because, I mean, we have to have one other thing. Whenever you choose a version of Cataclysm for Linux, you either get the option to use the Incursus build of Cataclysm or the Tiles build of Cataclysm. Incursus is pure text, Tiles is graphics. We're blind, so we're obviously gonna go for the pure text because graphics suck. Anyways, so with that out of the way, I think we can actually launch into the game, shall we? So, we are on the actually, let's let Orca tell you what current file we have selected is.
Cataclysm Launcher.
That's right, the Cataclysm Launcher is currently selected. We're going to press enter on it.
Question: do you want to run Cataclysm Launcher or display its contents? Cataclysm Launcher is an executable.
We don't need to hear all of that. Basically, Linux will ask you, hey, do you want to run the game in terminal, or display? We're going to want to run the game in terminal because those other 2 options do literally nothing, and if they do, I can't tell what they do. So, we're going to go
Run in terminal.
Run in terminal. Press enter on that.
Cataclysm terminal.
Now, because I just downloaded this game, and, I just downloaded this copy of Cataclysm, and have no pre-configured options, we're gonna go through the setup stage for this video, talking through the main menu, as well as a few of the key settings we're gonna wanna adjust to make the game just a bit more accessible for us. So when you first launch the game, for the very first time, it will ask you what language you want the game to be set in.
Select your language, 1 English, 2 Arabic, Alif, Lam, Ein, Ra, Bayet, Tetman, Buta, 3 Czeski, Język, 4 Dansk, 5 Deutsch, 6.
Yes, there's a whole heap of languages over there, so obviously, if you're a non-native English speaker, you might want to go for the one of the other languages, but given the fact that I barely understand my own native language, we're going to go for English. So we're just going to press enter. Now, after I press enter, guys, we're going to be dropped into the main menu. And in the main menu, right after I press enter, I think one of the issues of Cataclysm will be presented. So let's go ahead and see. Do we get the problem yet? Let me just let it go for a bit more in case we didn't get the problem. Yeah, are we sure we all know what the problem is? Yeah, I think we all know what the problem is. So, yes, some might say, Sam, that doesn't sound like a main menu. That sounds like a whole heap of slashes. What the hell does any of this mean? Well, simple, guys. This game, Cataclysm, is an ASCII roguelike. So, its graphics are simply symbols, and Orca sometimes interprets these symbols as punctuation. So even if you tell Orca, hey, don't read me any of the punctuation, it's still going to read these slashes, these dots to you, just because they're graphics in the game and that's what it thinks that they are. So, unfortunately, there's no way around this. You know, there's no way to disable the ASCII entirely in this game, so we're gonna have to shrug, we're gonna have to live with it, guys. But there are a few things which we can do where we don't have to tangle with this ASCII. Really, the main menu in Cataclysm is one of the more inaccessible regions. After we get past this, the game will become a lot more self-explanatory, but first we need to defeat the main menu. It's the first boss, guys. So the main menu of the game, it's a horizontal menu. It goes from left to right, with a number of options in following order: new game, load game, worlds, specials, settings, and anything beyond settings is basically pointless and we don't care about it because it's just credits and help and stuff like that, and we don't need that. Now, by default, whenever you launch the game, you will be dropped on the load game option, the second option from the left, which means that if we use our arrow keys, our left and right arrow keys, I'm going to be pressing the left arrow key,
Space.
right that, and the new game option is selected. Right arrow key,
Space.
we go back on the load game option, and guys, I think we've noticed another problem. It's not reading anything except for space. So this is a common problem when it comes to arrows in the game. In Cataclysm, whatever menu, whether it be it's your inventory or the main menu, they just simply don't read anything. So instead of fucking around with our arrow keys, and I'm gonna have to bleep that word out because YouTube will otherwise have my hide and nail it to a board, we are going to be using hotkeys because there are a number of hotkeys which can jump us to all of the important menus in the main menu. Not quite so much in the rest of the game, but in the main menu they will suffice. So N will, unsurprisingly, take us to new game, where you can choose between several different character creation modes and then go about creating your human which you will throw into the apocalypse. A takes us to the load game option, which you can choose which human you want to throw into the apocalypse that you've already created. T will take us to settings, where you can customize a few things that will I can't speak English, guys. T will take us to settings, where you can customize a few features of the game which will have a direct impact on the human you've thrown into the apocalypse's gameplay. W will take you to worlds, where you can create a world for your human that you're going to throw into the apocalypse to live in. And S will take you to specials, where you can engage in things like a tutorial, which you can, use to get accustomed to the gameplay, and a few challenges that your human, which you've thrown into the apocalypse, will face. I've said a lot of words in a very short period of time, and I don't know if everything makes sense, but hey, we got the main points. N, new game. A, load game. W, worlds. T, settings. S, specials. Done. So, if you all recall, we are going to now go over to the settings screen, because there are a few key options we're going to want to toggle to make our gameplay a bit more accessible. So we're just going to head and press T.
Options, key bindings, auto pickup, save mode, colors.
So as you can see, Orca did actually read out this screen. We have options, we've got key bindings, we've got a bunch of things. Now, no, excuse me. So this is also a horizontal menu. It goes from left to right. By default, your selected options, which is the first option from the left. If you hit the right arrow key, you'll go on to key bindings. Again, Orca isn't reading anything because the arrow keys do not read anything in this game, because why would they make your life easy? However, to demonstrate that we have indeed moved, let's press enter.
Key bindings unbound, keys, key bindings.
See, we had key bindings selected. Now, let's back out of this menu because we don't want key bindings, we want to go back onto options. Let's press escape. Now, mind you, escape lets you tab out of any screen in the game, whatever it may be. So, escape escapes. What can I say? So we've exited. We currently still have key binding selected, so we're gonna press left arrow key to take us onto options. There are unfortunately no hotkeys at this stage, at least to my knowledge, so we're gonna have to deal with the arrow keys, buddy. But you know, options is by default the first item in this list that's selected anyway, so all you really need to do is just press enter.
Options set a default character name that will be used instead of a random name on character creation. #default. General interface graphics.
Alright. So you can see that Orca read a few things there, and you might be wondering what the hell is happening. Well, I am a strong believer in the notion that in order to understand what's going on in Cataclysm, you need to understand the layouts of the screens so you can get a good picture of what Orca might be reading. So we are currently in the options screen, and the options screen is broken up into 5 principal columns. You've got General, you've got Interface, you've got Graphics, you've got World Defaults, and you've got Debug. I think those are the titles. I might be mispronouncing a few of those, but those are the general columns that you'll be dealing with, the 5 of them. To tab between these columns, you're going to use the tab key. By default, you're placed on the general column. So if I say I wanted to go to Interface, which is the next one, you're going to press tab.
Which language?
Like that, and Orca has read out hopefully the first option in this new column. But we want to say go back onto General, so we're going to use Shift Tab to go back onto it. Note, Orca doth not read nothing. So that's a bit of a bummer, but hey, you know, live and learn. Now, in each of these columns, you have a vertical line of options, which you can navigate using your arrow keys, which don't read anything. See? Nothing. I'm pressing the arrow keys, nothing. Or you can use your numpad, which is why I recommended you have one. With the numlock enabled, you can use the 8 key, like your up arrow key, to scroll up through the menu, and your 2 key, like your down arrow key, to scroll down through the menu. The good thing about these is that whenever you press 2, in fact, let's demonstrate what happens when you press 2 to go one option down.
Enable item auto pickup. Change pickup rules with the auto pickup manager. #default. False general interface graphics.
There we go. So you can see it read the description of the option. Orca will never read you the title of the option, but it will read you the description, which, I mean, the description describes what the title is, so you'll get an idea of what it does anyway. Now, Orca has also read out a few other pieces of information. These options, or all of them, have multiple different settings you can set them to, obviously, because then they wouldn't be options, would they? You can either have true or false prompts, you can have multiple choice prompts, or you can have prompts which want you to enter a number from a specific range. Orca will always read you what the default is, so if this is say true or false and its default is set to true, for example, it will always say, hey, by default it's set to true, and then it will tell you the possible choices for this. It will tell you if it's either true or false. It will tell you the range of numbers you can pick from, if it's if it requires you to enter a range, or it will tell you the possible choices, the possible settings you can set the option to. Now, when you press enter,
True.
it will tell you what you're setting it to. So right now we've set it to true. Another enter,
False.
we'll set it to false. However, let's stop mucking about with these options, because there are 3 in specific we need to toggle. So these options lie in the interface portion of the settings screen, so we need to take one tab,
Switch language.
like that. We're on switch language, which is the very first option in this column, so we're going to press 2 to go down the list.
Switch between Celsius.
Now,
switch between
as you can hear, there are a whole lot of options. I encourage you to, explore these options, because a few of them do, various things which can help you out during the game or customize your various gameplay. I think the next one is what we want. Nope. Ah, yes, here's the one.
Like read, smoke, wrap tighter will be displayed next to the corresponding items. #default, true general interface graphics, world defaults.
We want to make we want to make sure that this option is set to true. So, I don't know if the default is already true. I wasn't paying attention that much.
False. True.
Alright, so the default is always true, so that's good. Basically, this adds a little bit more text to items to tell you what they might do. So, you know, it adds a little bit more text to help you out. Why wouldn't you want that? Now, let's continue cycling down until we find a few more things of note.
If true, when controlling a vehicle, where new log messages should show number of where new log messages should show.
There we go. We want this one. Where new log messages should show. So, in Cataclysm Dark Days Ahead, you have a log. The log is basically, I was gonna say the log is basically a log, but that's so idiosyncratic, it's not even funny. The log is where all in-game text is stored. So if a monster does an action, the game will take that action, it will take the text from that action, and will store it in the log. The log is basically a record of all in-game events, whether it's things that monsters do, whether it's things your allies do, whether it's things that you do. And the log is very important for us blind players who can't really see what the world around us is doing and who have to rely on the log in order to figure out what's going on in the world around us. Now, by default, the log messages will appear on the bottom, which means that the log will present things to you, Orca will read things to you, starting with the oldest messages, which, considering that there would be hundreds if not thousands of items in the log, will get very tedious after a while listening through all those messages just to get to the most recent one. So we'll want to set this to top, like that, which will start reading log messages, the most recent first. So that will just make your life a hell of a lot easier and a lot less tedious. Onwards and upwards we go, to the next option.
Number of turns after the number of uplift when switch between pickup panel being left. How should morale displaced? How should confidence and steadiness be communicated to the player? Hash default, bars, values, numbers, bars, general.
Okay, now this is another very important one. In Cataclysm Dark Days Ahead, whenever you use a ranged weapon, whether be it a gun, a bow, a minigun, or a grenade launcher, whatever, what have you, you will always have two values. When you press the F key to fire, you will have a menu that pops up which tells you, hey, this is how confident you are in landing your shot, and this is how stable you are with this weapon, which directly affects your recoil penalties, and we'll get into that in due time, but just keep in mind, these two are very important calculations. Now, by default, these two values are represented as bars, graphical bars. I think you can see the problem. We obviously want to set these to numbers. By setting these to numbers, these will be communicated in the form of a percentage, which is making this a lot more accessible.
Numbers.
Like that. Let's continue
Now
on.
display style if true, but move view by how men with fast scroll if true. The menus will start scrolling in the center dot edge. Shift enabled. Automatic if true. Show enabled. Automatically assign letters to any carried if true. Show item health bars instead if true. If true. Show item health bars instead of reinforced. Scratched etc. text. Hash default. True general interface.
You'll want to make sure that this setting is set to true, because what this basically does is it shows you the health of your items. In Cataclysm, every item, whether be it jeans, a machine gun, pants, a box of noodles, whatever it is, it has an associated health. So, you know, if you bash a stick into a zombie's skull for too long, that stick is gonna go bye-bye. So, like this, the text version of this, setting it to text, to true, will tell you how damaged your favorite items are. Setting it to false, on the other hand, will show you a graphical bar, a health bar. I think you can see the problem. So we want to make sure this is set to true. I think by default it's set to true anyway, but I thought I'd point this out just in case.
False. True.
Okay, no, it was always set to true, but again, if you guys wanted to say, you know, make sure that this is always set to true, that's a wise idea. Because, mind you, since the game is always constantly being updated, you know, sometimes these values can change. Obviously, you can save your settings, but just be forewarned. Now, let's see, what other options do I think you'd be wise? Oh yes, I know what I wanted to show you. Let's run up here.
Selected items, contents, and if true, directional actions, like if true, actions, like read. Open default advanced in if true, will close the advanced inventory. Open default advanced inventory layout instead of last open layout.
Nope, not that one.
If true, will query before removing a key binding from a if if true, will query before disassembly if true, automatically follow the crosshair if true. Prompts such as y/n queries only accepts capital or modified letters while lowercase and unmodified letters only snap the cursor to the corresponding option. Hash default. True general interface.
Okay, this one I think is also one which is also by automatically set to true, but the description for that one was self-explanatory. Whenever you have yes or no prompts, which you will have many yes or no prompts, in the game, you'll either press Shift and Y to automatically say yes, or Shift and No to automatically say no. Otherwise, you'll have to press Y, that will take you to yes, and then you'll have to press Enter. It's just unnecessary key presses, and it might get confusing. Sometimes, let me think of a scenario here. Sometimes in Cataclysm, you'll be doing something and then a yes/no prompt comes up. Or something comes up, a pop-up comes up and you're not sure what it is. Pressing Shift and Y is a very easy way to tell if it's a yes or no prompt, so you don't have to fuck around trying to actually identify what it is. So let's just make sure this is set to true.
True.
Yep, it was always set to true. Now, the final option we'll want to toggle is in graphics over here. We can just go ahead and turn all of these off, because, I mean,
false. If true,
why would you have anything on? None of these really affect us. Like, you can keep these on, as far as I'm aware, but there is one specific one which you need to have off.
Forces the game to redraw if true. The title screen will use the art and set the probability of the alternate title when available item and monster description will show a picture of the object in ASCII art. Hash default. True general interface.
Yeah, we'll want to turn this off. Basically, you recall this ASCII art I was talking about before, with the slashes and stuff like that. Basically, whenever a monster or an item, as you can hear, has an ASCII art image, it will always show it. Which means that for us, whenever a monster or an item has an ASCII art image, our code will start going into a mess of slashes. So,
false.
Off with it, it goes. Obviously we don't want it, we don't need it. So this is basically all of the vital settings that I personally use in my gameplay. There are a buttload more settings that you would be wise in configuring, but I'm going to leave that up to you, seeing what you want to configure, how it affects your gameplay. Generally speaking, if you run into a problem in the game, it can be resolved in options and settings, so I advise have a play around, see what works, what doesn't work. So now we want to save our settings, so we're going to press escape and hit, as you can see, we press escape, but it hasn't read anything. It's one of these instances, for example, which I wanted to have the modifier keys for the yes/no prompt enabled, because it doesn't say anything, so I don't know if it's a yes/no prompt, for example. So we're just going to press Shift 1, like that, and it's automatically saved. I'm going to press exit again to go back into the main menu now. Here we're in the main menu, and that is, I think we're gonna leave it for today. I think we've run through the main menu, we've run through what it looks like, we've run through the settings. Next time we're going to be taking a look at worlds, how to create one, and character generation. Guys, I hope this video was at least moderately helpful. I know it wasn't super long, super detailed about the actual gameplay side of things, but for a new player, the main menu is often the blockage point. It's often one of those things where a new player looks and it's like, oh, what the hell is even going on here, man? And then they just give up. So it's very important to understand the main menu of Cataclysm Dark Days Ahead. So with that out of the way, and with that job done, I will see you guys next time, where we will actually get a bit more into the gameplay side of things, creating a character and whatnot to throw into the apocalypse. So guys, I was Sam. I hope this video was enjoyable. I hope this video was informative to you guys who wanted to pick this game up. I salute you, and I'll see you next time. Stay safe, people.